My dog was going ballistic at our side door. I yelled for her to come to me, but she refused to leave it and kept barking, which was really unusual behavior for her. As I come down the steps, I see a big dude standing on the other side of the door, fiddling with the knob and trying to get in. My heart stopped. I asked what he wanted, and he paused and looked at me surprised, as though he hadn't realized I could see him. I wouldn't have been able to if I hadn't been on the steps. He said he was looking for somebody. I tried to sound hard and said I already called the cops. He called me B*TCH and turned and ran off into the night. What scared me the most was he knew I was awake, and he knew the dog was in there, and he still tried to come in. That only tells me he had a plan for dealing with us, or was crazy enough to not care. I was starting to fall asleep on my couch sometime after 2:30 a.m. when I heard a cell phone go off in my basement. It was one of those old Nokia ringtones. I live alone. I froze in place on couch and didn't really know what to do. I wondered if I had just imagined it since I was in a half-awake/half-asleep state, but I'm sure I heard it. The next day, I went down there with a flashlight and my handgun to scope it out. The only reason I ever have to go into my basement is to relight the furnace. There is a door down there that leads outside to the street, and I live right next to a highway. The only thing I can think of is that someone snuck in through the door and left. I fell asleep next to a guy. I woke up after an intense episode of sleep paralysis with a weird dream or hallucination of this demon girl crawling across me. The guy next to me looked peaceful, so I didn't wake him. The next morning he described the exact same dream along with sleep paralysis. I never told him I had the same dream, 2F** King weird. When I was about 5 or 6, I woke up and saw an old woman standing in the doorway of my bedroom. She didn't say anything, just looked at me silently and stood there, but I was filled with the most horrible sense of dread I've ever felt in my life. I was absolutely terrified of this woman, and I hid under my covers and would peek out every few minutes to see if she was there. After what felt like hours, but was probably only like 15 minutes, she was gone when I looked. I ran into my parents' room crying, and my dad searched my room and the rest of the house but didn't find anyone. I slept with them for the rest of the night. I never did find a good explanation for what I saw, but a lot of other weird things happened in that house before we moved a few years later. Scariest thing I've ever seen to this day. This happened when I was an 8-year-old kid sleeping peacefully. I don't know why, but I woke up. It was weird. No sounds, no movement, everyone was asleep, and it was silent. I wasn't dreaming at all. I just woke up out of the blue. Suddenly, I heard footsteps outside my window and someone started knocking on the window. The window had wooden doors at that time. I turned the lights on. I was scared as less. I stared at the window and out of nowhere, this mother of curse started making ghost sounds going. I let out the biggest dad ever, and my father just jumped out of bed, and I heard someone running. My dad went outside with a baseball bat. No one was there. My neighborhood had some abandoned houses where junkies would usually stay. I guess he was checking if someone was in the house because a few years later, we had 2 occasions where 2 guys tried to enter our house. One was scared by a random street cleaner, bless him, and the other one got his ** kicked by my mother. I woke up to the sounds of 2 people burgling my house. I jumped out of bed, grabbed my bat, and went to investigate. As soon as they heard me, they legged it. I then phoned the police, and as soon as I got off the phone, I went into shock, sitting on my bedroom floor in my boxers, clutching a bat in case they came back. They never did, but that was 3 years ago now, and still, to this day, if I hear even the slightest sound at night, I'm fully alert and waiting for it to happen again. The paranoia has stayed with me since that evening. I fell asleep and woke up to the door being bashed in and doorbell being smashed. In my sleepiness, I thought it was my sister forgetting her key after taking the dog out. I didn't realize it was like 2 or 3 a.m. I got up when I thought nobody was getting up to let her in. I went down and opened the door. This barely dressed girl fell on top of me. I grabbed her and shoved her out the door, out of the porch, and into the arms of a guy standing in our front garden. I blinked and looked at them and the taxi still waiting outside. The girl was completely intoxicated, and the guy was so confused. I told him, "Wrong house," and he proceeded to drag the girl over the low garden wall. We had a small gate and they didn't seem to use it, and got into the taxi and left. To this day, my dad always brings it up. He thinks they were scoping out the place to rob us, and that was their cover to get someone to open the door. At the time, I had a bedroom on the top floor of the house, with a skylight right above my bed. I loved that skylight. You could see the stars and the moon and the occasional meteor. Anyway, one night around 3 a.m., I was awoken by the most hellish noise, and I could see through the window that the trees outside were dancing in wind. Suddenly, a blinding light came through the skylight and the whole room was filled with a bluish light. I had no idea what was going on. End of the world? Jesus coming to get me? Then I realized the hellish noise was a helicopter, and the light was one of those searchlights they use. I know those are common in cities, but I live in a rural area. The light clicked off, the helicopter flew away. The next morning, I hear from a sheriff's deputy that a man had broken into a house a mile or so away and injured the homeowner, then had run off into the night, so they were searching the woods and nearby farms with the helicopter and light.